Now in its 7th year of podcasting, Trekzone presents a Trekzone conversation with your host, Matt Miller.
Well, I'm now joined by Rajika. On Skype, we're talking about planets orbiting binary star systems. Rajika, thanks so much for your time today.
That's fine. I'm happy to be talking about my science and science fiction planets.
Now, this is really cool because there is a deep science fiction element to this study, but there is a basis in real-world science for these sort of Tatooines, as we call them.
Yeah. So I guess the most popular example of planets in binary star systems would be Tatooine. There's some other examples. So my personal favorite is Magrathea from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And also Gallifrey from Doctor Who is a planet that orbits 2 stars. So they're a special type of planet. So you can have what we call a binary star system. These are 2 stars that orbit each other. And planets can exist in these systems. If the 2 stars are far enough away from each other, you can have the planet go around one of the stars. And that kind of looks like our solar system. We just go around one star. But if the 2 stars are close enough together, the planet can go around both of those stars. And that's what we call a circumbinary planet. And that's what these sci-fi planets like Tatooine and Gallifrey and Magrathea are called. They're circumbinary planets. And for a long time, they remained, objects of science fiction because we hadn't seen them. But in recent decades, we have actually discovered planets that are orbiting 2 stars like these science fiction planets. So it's pretty neat.
That is really cool. How does one find these planets? Obviously, with an exoplanet around a single star, we're looking for the warble in the star's light. How does it sort of work with 2 stars?
Yeah, so it's a lot harder. And actually for circumbinary planets, we haven't been able to find any planets using that wobble that you're talking about. So that wobble in the light, that's called a Doppler shift. That happens when, I guess, the planet is big enough or close enough that it can tug on the star. The problem with these circumbinary planets is that the planet is often quite far away from the central binary star system, that it's just whatever effect the planet has is overwhelmed by the 2 stars. So we use other techniques. The transit method is where we look for little blips, like blinking of the star. So when the planet moves in front of the star, it blocks out a little bit of light. So you can see these little tiny blips in the starlight that goes down because the planet is blocking it. Most of the circumbinary planets that we've discovered today use that method, but it's quite a bit harder to look for them around binaries and around a single star. So when you think about our solar system, if an alien was looking at our solar system and they saw Jupiter pass in front of it, if they look, I think it's 5 years later, they'll see pretty much Jupiter passing at the same time. Like the period between those blips is pretty steady. And that's how we found thousands of exoplanets. So this method is really good for single stars though. When you have a binary star, the binary star is orbiting each other and they cause their own blips. And then the planets would be passing in front of those stars and also causing blips. And the problem is that those blips don't necessarily happen at regular intervals, and that makes it so much harder to find them. So actually, most circumbinary planets we've discovered are found by just by manually looking at the data, because we can't get a machine to search for them just yet. We're still kind of having to look at the data ourselves.
That is incredible. So how long is it taking to sort of, record the data and then analyze it to work out what you've discovered?
I guess it depends on the technique and the instrument. So I think for the Kepler Space Telescope, which is now dead, sadly, the requirements were you had to have seen 3 orbits. And obviously it's a lot faster to get 3 orbits if the planet goes around the star, every few days or every few weeks. So Mercury has an orbit of 90 days, I think. So if you wanted to capture Mercury, you'll just have to be looking at it for about 9 months, and hopefully you would have caught 3 blips. So that's the criteria for Kepler planets. And I think it'll be the same for circumbinary planets. You have to catch 3 orbits.
Yeah, right. So there is it's such a fascinating field, exoplanets and these binary star planets as well. Looking so far out, I mean, to even think that Earth is a dot on Mars's horizon. So it's just mind-boggling, I guess, to sort of know that where people like yourself are researching this field and are having success. I think is incredible. What sort of feeling is it like when you find another one or there's data that backs up your initial finding?
Oh, it's really neat. So we're still trying to figure out how likely it is for planets to form in binary systems. So we're working our way towards finding Tatooine, to say. Like, we found these planets in binaries, but they're often quite big, like Neptune size, or they're quite far away. So I guess one really cool thing would be to find a circumbinary planet that is sort of habitable, because then you could imagine like Tatooine, you could imagine the Skywalker family. That would be really cool.
And moisture farms, because obviously with 2 suns, it's going to get very dry.
Actually, that depends on lots of factors, mostly how far away the planet is from the 2 stars. And just because you have 2 suns doesn't necessarily you're going to have a lot more heat the planet's not going to experience a significantly higher amount of heat. So there's all these very fine factors about what can be a habitable planet. And often for planets to be stable around a binary system, they have to have orbits which are quite far out. So they'll probably have orbits of a few years as opposed to 1 year, depending on the size of the stars. But there's lots of nuances here, and we could go into that, and that would just be a whole different podcast.
Well, I do wonder, for you, Reggie, did science fiction come before science, or was it the other way around?
I would say the science fiction definitely inspired me. But it was also the science that got me into astronomy in the first place. So when I was learning about the planets for the first time, that really blew my mind, that there were these different types of planets like Venus and Jupiter that had just very different atmospheres or surfaces. And I liked stars and galaxies and everything, but planets were what was really keeping me interested. Unfortunately, when I was doing my master's, there wasn't anyone at my university that was really doing planets. After my master's, I wanted to pivot towards planets, but in my master's, I was doing binary stars. So I was like, oh, how can I mix together binary stars and planets just so I can hold on to some of my previous knowledge? And obviously, one of the first things that come to mind is Tatooine or Gallifrey, or these other sci-fi planets. So when I was reading Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, there is this scene where Douglas Adams is describing how Arthur Dent and co, they go to the planet Magrathea, which is where they build other planets. And he writes it so explicitly. They're like in the spaceship and they go over the horizon, they see this one sun, and they go a bit further and see this other sun. And he's like, it's a binary star. And he puts a lot of focus on that. And he was always talking about Magrathea pretty much being the impossible planets. Magrathea is the most improbable planet that ever existed. That's how it's worded in the book. And me being a scientist, I was like, why is he saying that? Is he saying that Magrathea is the most improbable planet that ever existed because it's orbiting a binary? So that really inspired me, and I put that quote into my thesis. So yeah, that's my favorite example.
That is brilliant. I love it. I do love those stories of how science fiction inspires people to enter this realm and study and try and prove points. It's really interesting to hear that Tatooine may not necessarily be the go-to planet for orbiting 2 stars, that you could actually have an Earth-like planet if there was a sufficient habitable zone in a binary star system.
Yeah, there's still so much that we don't know. This is a pretty new field, but it's exciting.
And are you a little bit jealous that exoplanets are getting all the headlines at the moment? We're finding one every other week at the moment.
Oh no, I love it because planets and binaries are also exoplanets, but I guess there's fewer of them. But I don't blame that. It's just sort of how the detection works. So with detecting methods, you find it easier to, find the big things because they make a bigger signal, a bigger indent. It's like when you're, hiking through the mountains, you obviously like the biggest mountain way out in the distance, but as you're like walking up to it, there's like all these little things in the way. So our detectors, when we first started building them, they were obviously picking up the biggest exoplanets. And now we're getting better that we can find like smaller ones in kind of environments that we didn't expect. So these are all stepping stones towards like learning about the diversity of exoplanets.
Absolutely. Well, and can I also ask, what drew you to Copenhagen? I believe that's where you are now, being an Aussie over in Denmark.
Yeah. So the way that academia sort of works is after you do a PhD, you have to do these short-term research positions, and it's often encouraged to go overseas. So I was applying for like all over the world, and I love Australia. I probably will come back, but I was offered a job here, and it aligned up really well with my previous research. So it just seemed like the perfect place to go to career-wise. And I've been loving it. My supervisor and I were pretty much on the same page about planets and binaries and how they form. So that's why I'm here for a bit, and I'll see where I go next.
Fantastic. Well, aside from Magrathea, one last question for you, Reggie. What would be your favourite sci-fi planet?
Jeez. I don't know. So when there's planets in science fiction which have like multiple stars, I'm always curious about like how they orbit, how that could become possible. So people had these interesting hypotheses of what Westeros, the planet that Westeros is on, like how could you have an orbit such that you have these very, very long winters that last years and short winters. So that was interesting to think about. Yeah, that one. Also the Futurama planet with 3 suns. That was a really curious one. But I don't think I can go past Magrathea. I'm sorry.
Fair enough. Well, I did say that was the last question, but one final question I've been wanting to ask you as well. Has your research destroyed your ability to just sit back and enjoy science fiction, or are you sort of sitting there and looking at all the physics of what you're seeing, so diving into the minutiae of everything that's going on?
A little bit. I love science fiction. I still love it, especially science fictions that take like one simple concept and just take that to the extreme. But there are times where I'm just like, this is not possible. So this is Trekzone. So I presume you were watching like Star Trek Discovery.
Yes.
So the first episode, Battle of the Binary Stars, that one hit home a bit because I do simulation.
Oh yes, of course.
I do simulations of disks and binaries, and I can see how they interact, and the way that they sort of portrayed it was not the most physical. So that got to me a bit, but I managed to work through it and watch the rest of Discovery.
Well, and of course, tardigrades and all those other things that are out there, microscopic organisms and all this sort of stuff that are probably out there.
That's biology. You can't ask me about that.
That's a whole other kettle of fish.
Yeah.
Reggie, well, thanks so much for having a quick chat with me today, talking about binary stars and the planets that orbit them. It's been fascinating and it's been cool. Thank you very much for having a bite-sized podcast with me today.
That's okay. Thank you for having me.
You can get social with Trekzone. Australia's unofficial home of Star Trek is everywhere you are. Get the wrap-up on our Facebook page. Keep in the loop on Twitter and relive Trek episodes on Instagram. Just search for Trekzone.